Scott McKeon, 5 amps, there's one in the bathroom. This pedal board, 62 Strat, SRV Strat, I think so. Hello friends, welcome to the show and welcome to the wonderful rolling hills of Dorset. Not that you can see them so much. This is the place I grew up, it's the place that's dearest to my heart, and I'm here to go and see a friend and pick up some gear, and we're going to go back to the studio and make a video today whose heart is not in Dorset, see the link? Would be about 5,000 miles southwest of here, somewhere in the region of Oak Cliff, Dallas, or Austin, Texas. Yeah, you can kind of see where this is going. Let's go and find him. Should be a good day. Listen to it. We've got a Dumbles style amplifier and we've got an old Vibroverb. So we're going to be geeking out on Stevie Ray today. Let's get back to the studio. That's hilarious because I always do that to Dan. Hello, welcome to that pedal show. Mick here.
Scott here.
Hello. As you can see, sorry, I'm going to just be grinning all day today. As you can see, Dan's not here. He's still sick, unfortunately. But Scott, this is Scott McKeon.
Hello.
For those of you who don't know. Scott and I go back a long way via various paths, Guitarist Magazine and all kinds of things. But what we're doing today, which you will have seen from the intro, is we're just going to geek off a little bit about Stevie Ray because we share this thing that just caught us from a young age.
Yeah.
Can you remember what it was, where you were, how it grabbed you?
Yeah, totally. So I was about 10 years old, and we went on a family trip up to see some friends in St Albans, and he was a friend of my dad's, old friend of my dad's, and I already played guitar, like rock and roll and that sort of stuff. And
At 10,
yeah. I was already jaded at that point. And he said he was into the blues, and he had this video cassette of Stevie Ray Vaughan, which was a tribute to Stevie Ray Vaughan, and the VHS that came out whenever it was, mid-90s sometime. And he was like, you got to see this guy, you got to check it out. So we're sort of there, and it cut to a clip. It was people talking about Stevie Ray Vaughan, like Buddy Guy and B.B. King. Yeah. And then it cut to a clip of Stevie playing Tightrope. And just little 10-year-old me was just like, what the hell is this? And my dad got the bug as well. So we basically from that day onwards, it was just all about blues, Texas blues. We went to Denmark Street the following day and went to, all the guitar shops and, bought books on Stevie Ray Vaughan and CDs and the hat and, just everything. And so within about a month or two, I was kind of playing that stuff. And then when I was like 12, I started doing gigs, pub gigs and club gigs and sort of doing that. Yeah, doing the Stevie sort of thing basically. So yeah, I was just totally hooked from that point, and kind of still am in a funny way.
We've talked about this a lot. Same with me, and a very, very similar story. Mm-hmm. Friend of my dad's, also my friend Ali McKinnell, who I want to mention, and pretty much the same thing. Saw it, heard it, and I would imagine it was exactly the same for kids in the 60s when they saw Clapton for the first time, or Jimmy Page, and you just see the iconography, you see. And the sound, for me, it was the sound, which is what we're going to get into today. Yeah. A little bit. And there we are, we're hooked. Now, as the years have gone on, it's probably worth saying that there is a bit of Stevie Ray overkill, right? And there's people, as soon as you start talking about him, people get a bit jaded. You and I have both been in and out of loving it and loving it less.
Yeah.
But I think it's okay to revisit and just remember what it is that lights us up so much. We're both smiling like idiots. Before we do that, it's worth saying that Scott doesn't spend his life getting Stevie Ray Vaughan tones.
Some people might disagree with that.
What have you been up to recently?
Growing up playing blues gigs and doing some of my own stuff, I got more into session stuff. So the last sort of 10 years I've been playing with Tom Jones, which has been like my main gig, which has been really cool because it's kind of allowed me to kind of tour the world and not only play with Tom, but he often kind of has lots of cool guests or friends of his that kind of come and sing with him. The last year, up until about the end of beginning of October, we were sort of doing a world tour. So we started in Asia and then went to Australia, South America, and Europe, North America. So and I kind of got the Stevie Ray Vaughan bug again because when I was in Dallas, I went to Charlie's guitar shop and picked up the Leslie. So that's kind of sort of set me off again.
You bought that in Charlie's?
Yeah. And managed to get it shipped over with all the tour manager managed to get it on all the gear that was coming back. That kind of just sort of set it off again, really, because I used to have a Leslie when I was kind of like 18, and then sold it, and I was like, I never want a Leslie again. You know, I'll never go down that road again, and then kind of ended up with one, and now we're here.
And here we are, and it is also worth saying that Scott released a record 2 years ago.
Yeah,
New Morning.
Yeah, 2021, I think it was.
Okay.
3 years ago.
So 3 years ago now.
Yeah.
God, time flies. Please give it a listen. Follow him on Instagram, number one, then you can see him all the way around the world. But also, please give New Morning a spin. Some mutual friends of ours, Paul and Jeremy Stacey, are involved. It is a remarkable piece of sonic achievement, if you don't mind me saying, mate.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
Please get it. Right. Okay. Now, we got to say thanks to somebody for this.
Yeah, so this is a good friend of mine, Neil Roberts, who's a collector and guitar fan. He lent us this, which is a Stevie Ray Vaughan custom shop Strat that they did in 2004, so 20 years ago. And the custom shop took Stevie's number one. I think Jimmy, his brother, was there, and they took it apart and they did a copy, all the pickups and the wear and the neck and everything.
It's so cool.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
I've never actually seen one in the flesh before, because they came out.
Yeah.
They were about 10,000 quid when they came out.
Yeah.
And I think they've basically gone up since then. So it's super collectible.
I think that there's only 100 of them or so that were made, and this is one of them. So
complete with peeling sticker.
Peeling sticker, yeah. And I think John Mayer's, he definitely had one, but I think his black one was kind of loosely or closely based on.
Well, I think it wasn't his black one originally. His favourite Strat when he was a kid was an SRV Strat, wasn't it? I think.
Oh yeah, the sort of signature series that they did, yeah. But
anyway, so you'll be hearing that. We're going to get into a bit of E flat, a bit of standard. Scott's brought his.
This is a 62. So after we got into Stevie Ray Vaughan, my dad mainly, he started buying Stevie Ray Vaughan related stuff. And this was from New Kings Road Guitars. We got this in 98. And it's a 62 Strat, all original. It had a bit more paint on it when I got it. But yeah, it's been like my main guitar since I was a kid. So it's very, it's like my main.
I love the way a lot of it's gone here.
Yeah. I used to, I still do really. I guess when you're playing in anger, you kind of go for it. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. And the custom shop built you a replica of it as well, didn't they? Which we'll see in a sec.
Yeah, this is like a copy that Dale Wilson did at Fender. And kind of made...
Pretty crazy.
Yeah, made to look and feel as close as we could get it. And I used, ironically, I actually use this one more at the moment because this is what I use with Tom, and this one mostly stays at home. I actually know that guitar better at the moment than this one.
As we'll introduce the rig as we go, but I guess Vibroverb.
Yeah, Yeah, so the Vibroverb, I would say, would be the amp that maybe stayed with Stevie from the early days till the whole way through.
This isn't going to be an exhaustive byte for byte history, right? Because if you want that, go on the web. These are touch points, and these aren't the exact amps, just to make that clear. It's a flavour of, and dare I say, a pretty damn good flavour of. Sorry, mate. Back to the Vibroverb.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, much like a Super Reverb or, I don't know, like a Pro or something like, 40 watt Fender amp. I think Stevie probably liked it because it had a 1x15 in it. Probably giving it, I don't know, more bottom end. And I have a feeling that he watched Albert King, and Albert King used to use those big 2x15
acoustic, was it? Yeah,
acoustic. But the famous Blues Power clip at the Fillmore East or West, he's using a dual showman, silver-faced dual showman head into a 2x15. So I kind of have a feeling that maybe that's where Stevie got the 15 sort of in his head, and maybe why he liked the Vibroverbs.
Let's just hear the Vibroverb then in all its glory. So this will just be the Vibroverb.
To me, it's got that really nice warmth, but top end of a Fender combo, So there's a brightness to it. That's with the bright switch off, actually. But I have a feeling, I mean, don't quote me on any of this, but I have a feeling Stevie used to use it with the bright switch on. Should we flick it on?
There's so many moving parts, aren't there? Because we were talking about this earlier. Once you get into big strings in E flat, which we'll do in a minute, then everything changes again. So you play, I'll turn the bright switch on and off.
Okay. So I find the bright switch, for me, I find it too bright.
It's too much.
But having spent many hours listening to Stevie Ray Vaughan, I have a feeling that he liked the brightness.
Well, I reckon, can I steal that for you for a second?
Sure. Yeah.
I reckon, for those of you who maybe don't hit the guitar so hard, bear in mind this is in E flat, right?
Yeah, I think I'm in E flat as well.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, I am in E flat.
When you lay off a bit more, and you go for, because you were also in position 4.
Yeah, that's kind of where I sort of stay. And to me, sometimes it sounds like Stevie had a 5-way. For instance, the start of that gig, Testify. Yeah. To me, it sounds that it's got that sort of phasey Strat.
It's definitely where you get those upper ends. I've just turned the bright switch back on a sec.
Yeah.
And then you get to the kind of... Hear the difference in the mid-range bark. I think you can clearly hear when he goes to the neck pickup.
Yeah.
Because I'd never really thought about him as a position 4 guy, but... Thinking about that Ain't Gonna Give Up on Love sound.
Yeah.
Where you can really hear the extended high end. I don't know, what key's that in? A maybe?
I think A, but technically A flat.
Yeah. So it would be... the extended high end with the bright switch.
Yeah. And he was probably using, at that point, JBL speakers, which are bright as well.
Even more.
Yeah. And if you look at the Elmer Combo video, it looks like the amp is mic'd from behind. So bear in mind, because we're listening to it recorded, aren't we? You know, the Super Reverb and the Vibroverb look like the microphones are behind the amp. So that would kind of, to me, indicate that it was a really bright sound, because it still sounds bright and chimey, even though they put it in the back, which gives you that can't think of the word, tubbiness of, when you stick a mic behind it. So
okay, so we know that if you see videos and pics of him early days, you'll see at least one amp, usually two. Tube Screamer was a feature early doors, right?
Yeah. So weirdly, I think he's famous for using the 808, but I think he only used that early on. Right. And then he was kind of on the TS9, Elmer Combo and everything, TS9, and then the TS10 from sort of 87 or so onwards. I'm in my head, I'm laughing because I've got friends of mine that take the piss out of me for liking Stevie Ray Vaughan so much. So I'm just imagining the
What, you went all the way there and did a video on Stevie Ray Vaughan, for God's sake? Yeah. Do you think it might have been because they were available?
Yeah, I think he probably used one because he probably saw someone else, maybe his brother or someone using one. Yeah. And I think it was probably, you know, I guess not that I was around, but like in the 80s and stuff, probably there was a lot of gain going on. Yeah. So I imagine when there was something like a Tube Screamer that just gave you, you know, a bit more without it sounding like rock, you know, without it. I mean, obviously it can go a bit gainy, but I think the way he used it was probably more as a boost.
Well, you can see, right? So the volume is nearly all the way up. The gain is pretty much all the way down. Tone just somewhere around the middle.
Yeah.
Why don't we, before we turn another amplifier on then, let's have a listen to, why don't we listen to the 3 Tube Screamers?
Sure.
And just see where we are. It's everything we say about them, isn't it? They get clearer sounding as they get newer. Would you agree?
Yeah. I'm quite new to the TS10. I've only had that a couple of months, and I really like it, actually. Yeah. Funny enough, I haven't used the Tube Screamer in years. I grew up, as you might have guessed, playing a Tube Screamer a lot. Usually 2, actually. But I've kind of gone off, you know, I've been using a Jan Ray. That's been like my main sort of Tube Screamer, like overdrive for a while. But it's funny because when you go back to a Tube Screamer, it takes away some of the bottom end, doesn't it? Like when we were playing then, and it's sort of the EQ just kind of.
One of the things that really spun me out. So before we came to make this video today, I was listening to the live record, the Live Alive record. In the car, and I know there was quite a lot of post work done on that record, so to speak, because that was when he was in his really shaky stage, wasn't he? I think he actually collapsed on that tour, didn't he?
Yeah.
Because he was you know, drug and alcohol dependent, and he was in a really bad way. But the sound of the guitars, considering the rig that's used, have a look at the cover artwork, and you'll see the rig that's used, sort of this plus 2 Dumble 4x12s. Was that?
Yeah.
Was that record?
Think so, yeah.
And yet the guitars have virtually no bass on them in the mix.
Yeah. I think, again, I don't know if that's just the way it was captured or if that's what he liked, but I going back to that top end thing again, I think it was, you know.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that in the room there would have been a lot of bottom end.
Yeah. And a lot of everything else.
412s.
And a lot of everything else. Yeah. Cool. So that's a nice listen to some Tube Screamers. Then we move into the multiple amps thing, right? So what came next, would you say? Was it Dumble?
Yeah, when he did Texas Flood, the story goes, he went to Jackson Browne's studio. They'd met each other in Montreux, and he'd gone there, and I think he'd probably taken his whatever amps he had at the time, so probably Vibroverbs.
Yeah.
And in the studio was Jackson Browne's Dumble. I think it was called a Dumble Land, and I think he used that with the Vibroverbs for that first album, which they did in 2 days.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
They just played their live set through basically. So yeah, I think that would be the first meeting of him.
So we'll listen to this is a Dumble style amplifier, and it is on a 2x12 EV cabinet. We know Stevie Ray liked his Dumble 412s, which is like, it's just hard to imagine 4 EVs.
Yeah.
But we got two.
We got two.
It's a little room. This amp, we're being deliberately kind of guarded about what it is because it has an interesting history. But anyway, suffice to say, it has a significantly good flavour of Stevie's later Dumble, yeah?
Yeah, so it's in the steel string singer sort of category. And it's loud. Well, it's just loud, isn't it?
It is flipping loud. If you play, I'll turn it on while you play, and then we
Yeah.
can hear it on its own and with the Vibroverb.
Okay. Shall I do it with a tube screamer or without?
Leave it without for. It's insane. I have to have a go. Sorry.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
That is properly insane. And it's again, I'll say again, it's kind of gainy.
Yeah, this particular one definitely has a little bit more grit to it than I thought it would have. I thought it would just be extremely clean and loud, which it certainly is, and I think you could probably set it like that as well. But there's a little bit of
there's a bit of gain on. We've also got some hum, obviously, because we've got like hundreds of amps running. I've done my best.
Yeah.
It's the delivery on it. The delivery on it is crazy.
Yeah.
It's so like bush. If you'll indulge me for a second. I appreciate we'll be back up to standard here. I just want to hear this for 2 seconds.
Really strong sounding, isn't it? It's you know, you can imagine if you were used to Fenders, knowing that a 40-watt Fender amp's going to break up at a certain point, and then you plugged into that, and you're like, it's all of that good stuff, but just so much more, isn't it? You know, headroom and
it definitely sounds like it is overdriving a little bit more. Maybe we'll tame it back in a bit. So that's a combination of 2 amps. Moving forward from that, when did the Vibratone turn up? So the Vibratone is a Fender's version of a Leslie. It has a spinning speaker mechanism inside the cab there. Google it.
Yeah. So it's a 10-inch speaker with a thing that does that. So I think that came in, I'm not an expert, but I think that came in around Couldn't Stand the Weather, which was his second album. Yeah. Came out in 84, around then.
Because it's on the title track, right?
Yeah. So, and that's Jimmy Vaughan, his brother. I have a feeling that a lot of the things Stevie did, he probably saw Jimmy do. Yeah. So I think the Leslie could have been a Jimmy thing. Right. And then he's like, I want one of them. So yeah, that's when I think you first hear it, around then. And then after that, it was in his rig the whole time. Yeah, and then as we'll hear as the video goes on, again, you know, you get a bit older and you listen to this stuff again. I was listening to it in the car today, going, "Oh my God, that Leslie is on the slow speed all the time on that live version of Texas Flirt." Yeah, I think once maybe he used it in different ways at different times, but I think a lot of the time the Leslie was on slow. Yeah, and that's a really satisfying sound to play with, you know, when you're on stage or whatever, because it gives you this subtle chorus. Yeah. And it's less power. He used to power his Vibratone with a Vibroverb, so 40 watts. So it wasn't, you know, it was still sort of, it wasn't as loud as his other amps, but it was in the mix somewhere. Do you know what I mean? Just giving it that nice sort of phasiness, giving it the movement. And of course it's a sound that we were familiar with because you'd heard it via the Beatles, you'd heard it via Pink Floyd, in Leslie format, and exactly as you say, that subtle and very real chorusing. Okay, I won't turn the Dumble style amp back on just yet. We'll hear it with the Vibroverb. I've got it set up out of G3 here, so we can turn it on. It's so cool. Again, just listen again. Play something a bit gentle, and I'll turn it on in the background and just hear what width it gives to the overall sound. Yeah.
Total signs of a misspent youth.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, man. That was, you are at that guitar is in E flat, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, E flat, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man. Happy memories.
Yeah, and you just, I mean, that really is where, for me, and sort of getting this one recently, like, it's just so much, it's so satisfying to play with because, like, should we hear the Leslie on its own?
Yeah.
Because it's quite a boxy sort of sound. And the way the reverb goes through the baffle, so you get this reverb trail that's kind of like, you know.
Well, if you start playing, I'll turn the Vibroverb down.
Okay.
So that we get the contrast. So, as you heard the Vibratone, on its own, and then I pushed the Vibroverb back in again. And that combination of the two things, like you say, you get the immediacy from the Vibroverb, and then that just immense space from the spinning speaker.
Uh-huh.
We talk about it on the show. You know, Dan and I are big fans of running wet dry with 2 amps, for example. And while it's not the same thing, if you don't have a rotating speaker and you've got something like a Strymon Lex or even a HK Rotosphere or something like that, if you do run it into a second amp, you get much closer than you would running it into a mono amp, even though it's still, you know, the digital sims are just a million miles away, aren't they?
Well, like, I guess as well, like, I guess you sort of got that wet. Is that what you call it? Wet dry?
Exactly what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. So
because it's 2 separate sources.
So it's blended in with the dry signal, isn't it?
Yeah.
The amp, you know. Yeah.
And it gives you that lovely movement. It's flipping killer.
It's the sound just goes 3D, doesn't it? It's like you go from an amp, which sometimes an amp in a small room can be a very direct sound, to suddenly you've got this, you know, especially when it's on the sort of slow setting as well, you know, just this lovely sort of phasey kind of.
Yeah, have a listen to have a listen to Live Alive. I don't know if it's been remastered or what, but I certainly don't remember it from originally listening to it. The sound of the guitar going left and right because of the Leslie.
Mm-hmm.
As you can see, we've got it mic'd left and right, or maybe you can't see. We have got it mic'd left and right.
There's a great bootleg a bit later, 1985, in Japan. I think that's on YouTube, and the Leslie's really loud in the mix on that. You know, it's crazy loud, because I think normally the sort of Leslie would be just somewhere sizzling away beneath the main sort of amps, but it's great when you hear it.
And as you say, always on, probably. Yeah, pretty much.
I think so. Yeah, that's my hunch.
If it's there, it's probably on.
Yeah.
How do you play Scuttle Buttin? do you pick it or do you slide it?
I go.
So you slide it.
Yeah, slide it. Yeah, but he did bend it, didn't he, on the record?
I don't know. Can you pick it all or alternate pick? I mean,
I'm not sure.
All plectrum.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
I never know if that's alternate picking or if it's...
Because I couldn't work out if he bent or you know, but it's going to not be that, is it?
I think he did it with the pick. But he maybe he did it.
Tangent.
Well, yeah.
So then, I think it would be only right to switch the Dumble style amplifier back on now, because then we've got the sort of classic 3.
Yeah, I think he would kind of, from when he got the Dumble, the steel string singer, it seemed like that was pretty much there in one way or another all the way through.
Yeah. With
Fender amps. So the mid 80s seems like there was sort of Vibroverbs and super reverbs alongside the Dumble and the Leslie, and that was kind of the rig, you know, pretty much for most of the way through. And yeah.
Okay, we'll start with the Vibroverb and the Vibratone then. So the Vibroverb 1x15 and the Vibratone 1x10 rotating speaker cabinet being powered by the 2-Rock currently. We'll then switch the Dumble style amplifier back in. I might see if I can just clean it up a little bit, because it does seem to be overdriving a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, because my impression of his Dumble was always that it was like super clean.
Well, there's some switches on there.
All right.
There's like a guitar and a mic input. I think there's sort of gain on the left.
Okay.
And so there's a couple of things.
You should watch it. You'll probably throw it out of phase, won't
yeah.
it? Cool. All I did was turn the input gain down a bit.
And it's cleaned up.
Cleaned up a bit. So let's see what happens when we stand on a tube screamer with these 3 things happening then.
Okay. I could play something a bit more subtle if you
I think we'll... Actually, yeah, it's a good time to do it. Sorry about the hum in the background. It's a good time to do it. So everything now, to this point, has been like balls out.
Yeah.
Really, really. So let's see, can we drag it back a bit and go for some of those lovely, clean things?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. Sorry, Earth Loop, my problem, my fault. The delivery of that thing is just with the EVs and everything, even though we're still somewhat above them.
You can imagine in a venue, in a big old place where it's sort of echoing around and stuff, and if he's got a couple of Vibroverbs and a couple of Super Reverbs, I mean, it must have been a huge...
And 2 Dumble 412s. I just don't know.
But it's like a good loud. I think I was saying this earlier. There's like, I mean, I know it's really loud, but I always think there's like good loud and bad loud, And when it's good, you sort of feel it here more than your ears, And
totally, yeah.
And I think it's how he would control it as well. Like when it was really loud, it would get really loud, but it wasn't... I think he would use it in such a way that it was it could be subtle as well, and it could be not so big at times,
Yeah,
maybe.
It's hard. It is hard to imagine in these days. So Doyle Bramall, right? Doyle 2.
Yeah.
And I interviewed him once and asked him about Stevie Ray because they have a lot of common history, and he told me that once he was doing some show where they were all playing. In order to get where he was going, he had to walk past Stevie Ray's amps. Right. And as he walked by, he gives it the big boom, and he said his knees literally buckled.
That's what I've heard Stevie likes. He liked to go over to his amps, and the air would sort of make his trousers kind of, the air from the speakers.
I mean, it's crazy in these days, isn't it? So, of course, then, when you've got all that going at 110 dB in our little tiny room, What about the Marshalls then? Because from fairly early, there was often a Marshall in the shot.
Yeah, so very early on, he used a Marshall 2x12 with the Vibroverbs, or Vibroverb, which was, I think, what's it called? Club and Country. It's like a sort of, guessing it's a late 70s Marshall, something or other. I think you can hear that in the beginning, that album.
Yep.
So that was early on. I think he always probably had a bit of a thing for Marshalls because of Hendrix. So that I'm sure that was in his...
Without doubt.
In his thinking somewhere. But I don't think the Marshalls really showed up. He used maybe sort of late 80s, sort of 88 or something around then. He started using a Marshall Major or a Super Lead, like Mark II Super Lead.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen, he would sort of use them a lot alongside the Dumble. So, I mean, obviously I wasn't there, but I would guess he was sort of using the Dumble and the Marshalls.
Yeah.
There's a few pictures where there's 2 Dumble 412s and a Marshall Major and a Dumble steel string singer and a Leslie with a Vibroverb.
For those of you who don't know, the Marshall Major is the big one, the 200 watt.
200 watts or something.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sometimes I kind of wonder, I guess he liked loud and clean.
Headroom. I think that's what it was about with the Marshalls. It wasn't about trying to dime them and sound like Hendrix. I think it was about... Also, as we'll hear in a minute, there is a very particular mid-range bark in a Marshall that I think is not a million miles from adding a tube screamer to a Fender.
Right.
It's kind of... It has that mid-range bark in it.
Probably also something to... that just sort of is probably worthwhile saying before I forget, is using different amps and mixing them together for the different, like you said, the different sound qualities. So if you've got a couple of Fenders cranked or like the Vibroverb, you're getting that compression, so that which feels great under your fingers. Any Fender amp sort of above 4 or something. Yeah, that nice top end compression. So I think he liked that. But then when you add in the Dumble and you've got that headroom and that bigness and the punch, when you play a low note, it gives you that. So you've kind of got those two sounds going on, the tubey, compressed, glassy, Fendery thing with maybe the more mid-range bottom end solidness, and then you throw a Leslie into that, so you got this 3D sound. So
it just becomes massive.
I didn't go out much when I was a kid. I didn't go out till I was like 30.
And then you were on tour.
I didn't stop going out.
Okay, quick flip. You'll see that an Octa Fuzz has turned up on the pedal board. This is we'll get to that in a minute. This is Scott's own company, SM Fuzz, and it's an important part of the sound as we get a bit later. But let's rewind a sec. We started to talk about Marshalls and the mid-range bark. So, of course, what do you do to an immense 3-amp setup? You add a fourth. As Scott implied earlier, it wasn't necessarily in that order. I think the Marshalls were there as we spoke about. So it's not necessarily in this order. But let's we'll just go back to the Vibroverb on its own a sec, and then we'll switch the Marshall in with the Vibroverb to give you an idea of what's happening in the 2-amp rig. And then I'll just mention it. There happens to be another amp in the toilet, which is a Deluxe Reverb that's mic'd for a bit of extra ambience, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, go for it. So this will be the Vibroverb. Madness. I don't know if it's just because my ears have had a minute to calm down. I actually think that combination is maybe the most Stevie sound we've heard yet. Do you?
It's hard for me to say because my ears are completely messed up. but it all feels good.
The Marshalls bring in a real clarity.
Yeah.
And that sort of low mid-range bark, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the steel string singer style amp is so loud that when that's on, it's kind of all you hear in a
killing everything else. Maybe I'll just knock it back a bit. Okay, let's have a bit more of that. During this part, we'll turn a tube screamer on, and if I can ask Scott to keep playing, I'll do my best to mix in the bathroom Deluxe Reverb before
the bathroom is key to set, because I think a lot of the I've heard through friends and things that I've read and seen that Stevie would often put an amp backstage or in the truck, like in the lorry sort of thing, ambient mic it, and then blend that in. I think maybe for himself, so he could hear it in his monitors, so he had a nice sort of roomy ambient sort of Fender amp coming back at him. But also if it was being recorded. So I think there's a lot of gigs when you listen to the sound and how does it sound that big?
Yeah.
With just a couple of mics in front of it, particularly in something like the Alma Combo. I don't know if he was using it then, but like...
Yeah, so we do know that early days, something like the Roland Dimension would have been used to give it a bit of
definitely
spread.
Texas Flood, you can hear that chorus on the thing.
So we know that happened, and then the Vibratone maybe stepped in for that in a live sense.
Yeah.
The spinning speaker, because it gives not the same effect, but a somewhat similar widening effect. And then in addition to that, if you've ever tried this, we certainly do it at home on the show, close mic the amp and then put a mic in the room facing away. And the sound that the microphone picks up from the reverberant room is radically different from what it gets from the amp. And that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So we take that to the nth degree and we stick an amp in the bathroom because normally in a bathroom it's a tiled surface, right? So you get that hard reflection. Ours is just painted walls, but it still sounds pretty cool nonetheless.
Yeah. Also, a lot of old blues records and kind of cool guitar sounding records, particularly the blues stuff, I think was kind of done like that, maybe by accident. The guitar's coming through on the vocal mic, or they've shoved it over there to keep it out the way.
Or they've left the drum overhead up and someone's gone, oh man, that sounds fantastic.
So those early blues records that you hear, I mean, you just get that big guitar sound, you know,
Yeah.
and putting an amp in the bathroom definitely gives you that thing. I mean, it's like it's my favorite thing. If I'm ever doing anything, I always in the back of my head I'm thinking, I wish I had the I wish I had the room mic.
All right, let's keep it really simple then. We'll turn the Vibratone off. You will hear You'll hear the Vibroverb and the Marshall, and what I'll do is I'll fade up and down the bathroom Deluxe Reverb. While Scott's playing, I am just going to go and check that it is on. I'm pretty sure it is. So, Vibroverb, Marshall, and bathroom Deluxe Reverb. We'll call it Toilet Deluxe.
Yeah.
Keep going, buddy. Keep going. Keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jesus.
How loud was that on the old thing? 111. Cool.
Yeah.
We got to beat that.
I mean, that is by some margin the loudest noise we've ever had in here.
Yeah, great.
Regardless of what the dB meter says. I mean, I'm feeling that move parts of my body.
Yeah.
Deluxe Reverb in the bathroom is working great.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear that because the reverberant sound of it in there is mad.
Yeah, you blend that into the other stuff, and then the sound just gets bigger. You know?
Yeah, there'll be a bit of tomfoolery because we also have room mics, right? So it might be that I'll try and do something in the edit to indicate.
I always think that's one of the things with Stevie's sound, and you know, same with Hendrix or something as well. When you think of like, you know, the slow version of Voodoo Child, for example, that kind of ambient sound.
Yeah.
That just gives it that bigness, whether it's the vocal mic picking it up or the drum mics, whatever it is. You know.
Totally, isn't it? Can I steal the lead for a second? Sure. So I use a Chase Bliss Audio Meris 440. No, not 440. The reverb, you know, with all the moving sliders on.
Oh yeah.
For that. CXM78. Sorry, I'm so overwhelmed by tone. And for that exact room sound.
Yeah.
But let's do an experiment a minute. So we'll put the we'll just use the Marshall and the Vibroverb again, and I will add toilet amp in and out. So to give it that. You should have been able to hear when I've added Toilet Deluxe Reverb in and out, just that little reverb sound. It's so cool, man. I am loving that and that.
Yeah, definitely works
in a big way. All right, let's move. Let's gallop towards a conclusion then. So, when do we think fuzz started appearing?
I think you first hear him used because up until Instep, it always seemed like he was tube screamers or that kind of thing, or just amps up loud. I'm pretty sure you first hear the fuzz on Instep.
Okay.
Because it's on Tightrope.
Yeah.
It's on Leave My Girl Alone, and a couple of the other tracks on there, because it's a bit more of a not papery sound, but you know what I mean? It's the tube screamer and the Fenders and everything is very sort of rich, glassy. But as soon as you have a fuzz, you get a bit more of that sort of I can't think of the word, but you know what I mean? Percussive sort of.
It might sound a bit crazy to any of you out there who've got a TS and a fuzz and think, how could you possibly confuse the two? But if you think about the way Stevie Ray ran his amps, which was really loud, tube screamer dimed like that, volume wise, going into an amp that's already cooking, actually there's a tremendous amount of gain that occurs, and a lot of stuff that happens in the amp section, you know, right from the front end, all the first tubes into the power section, output transformer, speaker distortion, all of those things all work together, and all of a sudden you think, is that fuzz or is it just really, really overdriven? So it's not as crazy as it might sound. But then so he comes back, he gets clean, or during the process of getting clean, he makes Instep.
And I think he had a bit of a hard time, from what I read, sort of, I think, being a bit nervous about not having drink and drugs to record. So I think that there's stories of him having something like 32 amps in the studio. And spending hours and hours getting tones and sounds and changing pickups and necks and loads of stuff like that. So I think he was searching a bit more on that record.
It was certainly much more. I mean, if you go from Texas Flood through what was next, Couldn't Stand the Weather, Soul to Soul, the live record, actually the tonal, even though his, a bit like any great world-changing, genre-leading player, their playing is always them and it could never be anything else. But actually there was quite a big sonic jump into Instep, wasn't there?
Yeah, it was a lot more focused, and the quality of the recording was a lot, you know, so some of those records like Live Alive and Soul sound very 80s, don't they? They sound, there's sort of, you know,
Texas Flood sounds pretty 80s, doesn't it?
Flood, in a cool way, which is sort of, as I get older, I like even more. You know, the fact that it has got that sort of slight chorusy thing on it. But I think Instep felt like a big sort of step in a, you know, bit cleaner sounding, I guess, you know.
So Fuzz was then, if you look at pictures, I mean, there's so few pictures of his pedal boards down the years. One of the things which we haven't talked about was he had an MXR splitter loop switcher. And that was because we think perhaps some of the other effects on the board were quite tone-sucking. He liked to switch those out. Is that?
Yeah, it looked like the MXR Loop thing was there from pretty early on.
Right.
So I think maybe the Tube Screamer and the wah. I've heard that someone his tech used in the early days would just come on stage and plug the wah in and then unplug it.
Right.
Early on.
Yeah, because the bypass state in those early wahs was pretty dreadful, and it was pretty tone sucky when it was turned off. Same with Tube Screamers, as we know, it's buffered, so the bypass in it changes the sound, and if you're playing at 100 and whatever dB through Insanity Plus, because it was like double this, wasn't it? You're going to hear all those tiny changes. So even he was hip to that idea of switching it out of the thing. We're sort of replicating that with G3 today. Everything is independent, so that we're not hearing it when it's off. Just to make that point. Okay, fuzz then. So little plug for SM Fuzz, I think would be only appropriate.
Yeah.
So we've got one of your fuzzes which is just off pedal board here, which you can see. What's that?
So that's an AC128 fuzz, fuzz face style.
Yeah, which is where he was.
Yeah, with a couple of sort of little tweaks in the circuit that we've kind of added for some, bias controls and other things. So yeah, I mean the thing with the fuzz face and I think with the SM Fuzz is using the volume control, because it's very easy to sort of it's a totally different animal when you're up full to the Tube Screamer.
Yes.
The Tube Screamer you tend to use and play. It makes you play in a certain way. It makes me play in a certain way.
Yeah.
When you use the fuzz and you back off the volume, it can be Tube Screamer like. So I think that's kind of where he was. If you look at his when he's Austin City Limits, for example, where he's using the fuzz. He's got the fuzz pedal in there. Something like Tightrope, he's using the volume to clean up. So his drive sound is more like the fuzz.
It's really fuzzy as well, isn't it?
And then when it kicks in and he comes up, it's like full on fuzz face. But also it adds top end as well. So I think that's probably something else he likes is when you have the fuzz on but the volume at about 7.
Yeah, it's really sparkly.
You've got a nice sort of.
So is this set where we need it to be set?
It should be somewhere around there. Yeah, I normally like it quite loud.
Really?
Yeah. So, is there a way of getting? What should we have on? Like the Vibratone and the Vibroverb, and then maybe the Marshall and the.
And all of it.
Yeah, all of it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's basically what you're saying.
Yes, we did it.
Yeah, we might have been pushing the gain a little bit there, but and it's very hard to tell because we're at like stupid volume.
Yeah.
And then moving on from there, Octa.
Yeah. So I'm guessing he may have used this, in conjunction with the fuzz.
Because he had the Roger Mayer one, right?
Yeah, the Roger Mayer, which is quite similar to what we've put in the Octa Fuzz.
Yeah.
So I could give you a little demo of that.
And would you have the fuzz on before this, or would you?
I'll just go just the octave at the moment.
Yeah.
So you can hear it, but I think he probably did use it with a Tube Screamer or with a fuzz. And
it might have been at different times. The orders were different. We Scott and I both think the Tube Screamer was pretty much always last.
Yeah. I think so.
And it might have been some other things got...
Because you had to have the fuzz stuff first.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'm pretty sure you would have had the tube screamer after that.
Okay.
So yeah. Should we do everything again?
Why not?
Yeah.
In for a penny.
Why not?
Yeah, if you...
Yeah.
Get out of town.
We got some funny noises coming through.
That's properly insania.
Yeah.
Can you just indulge me? You can
Go
play
for
this
it.
out, but there's a wah-wah on the floor. So we'll just have a quick go on that a minute. I might have to
You gonna have everything on?
I don't know about everything. Let's see.
I think you should.
Things like this don't happen every day, so forgive me. Well, Scott's going to play us out, but
I'm not sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, mate.
Oh man.
Had to do it.
Epic.
Had to do it. That's crazy.
Yeah. It makes you play. Sounds like a silly thing to say, but it makes you play a certain way, doesn't it? Because it's such a big sound. You know?
I think, you know, maybe before you play us out, it is an indulgence because, you know, Scott's a pro player, right? So one of the dangers of being a pro player is that you carry those bags around. That's what you do.
Yeah.
And therefore people are like, oh, I don't know about that guy. He's the Stevie Ray guy.
Yeah.
For me, less important, but still where the show is concerned, if you just wear that heart on your sleeve all the time, that's kind of all you are. And we know that through the years, you know, generations of Strat playing blues guitarists have sort of carried those bags. But I have to say,
it's just
for
great.
a few hours today, just to kind of reignite it and remember what it was that lit us up so much about it. I mean,
I have to kind of wean myself off it a little bit sometimes because you just sort of you start going down that rabbit hole, and I love it.
Yeah.
And I think I always will, but I kind of have to sort of like maybe just move away and just kind of like, okay, I'm just gonna leave that for a moment and sort of go over here somewhere but it's cool coming back to it. I haven't really sort of gone this far into it probably since I was like early 20s or something, so it's really cool to have sort of come back to it with fresh ears, like you were saying,
or dead ears now.
Fucking tinnitus, and just sort of hear it and kind of appreciate it for how great it is. And
and I think, you know, the comments will be many and varied on this video. I dare say you will have heard more authentic Stevie Ray tone, certainly in the hands of Stevie Ray Vaughan and maybe even elsewhere. There's still a huge amount of tweaking, of balancing, of mixing those amps to the optimum thing. Not forgetting, of course, whatever there is there, insane number of watts, very powerful and efficient speakers in a tiny room. You know, it's not the same as being in a huge space that can kind of take it. I think it's definitely folding in on itself a bit in here.
It's all about the context, isn't it? Of when it was, who it was, what the gig was, you know, and just Stevie
and him.
Yeah, just I mean, like he would have sounded great through a whole number of amps, but that setup that he had in the 80s with everything is just killer, isn't it? I love the fact that he was around in the 80s as well, and he wasn't like, think about how many guitarists he must have known that were using racks and 80s sort of stuff, you know, and Floyd Roses, whatever like people were into at the time, but he was still like, no, I'm playing a Strat, Vibroverb.
Skinny
Marshall.
Kid turns up with a knackered Strat, like a wall of amps humming like a banshee. Probably, you know. Oh, that's hilarious. Cool, man. Thank you so much for Scott. He texted me a week or so ago and said, I've got all this stuff, shall we do this? I'm like, yes, we should. So we wish Dan a speedy recovery, say thank you very much for watching. Hope this was useful and maybe gives you some more stuff to look into. Please go to thatpedalshowstore.com to buy merch. That's how we fund the show. Patreon.com if you want to support us in that way. And other information all in the links below, including where you can find Scott on das Interwebs. I think you better play us out, mate.
Cool, man.
You tell me.
Everything. I'll go for a bit of fuzz.